The $2.50 Decision That Changed Gaming Forever. A documentary on the first major in-game microtransaction. The Golden Age. The year was 2006. Gaming was experiencing a renaissance. Console technology had advanced to create breathtaking worlds that pushed the boundaries of interactive entertainment. The Xbox 360 had launched the previous year, bringing with it Xbox Live Marketplace, a revolutionary digital storefront where players could purchase downloadable content directly from their consoles. The infrastructure was in place. The players were online and connected. The market was ready. But nobody knew what was about to happen. Nobody could have predicted that a single piece of cosmetic horse armor would become the catalyst for a multi-billion-dollar industry shift that would fundamentally alter gaming forever. March 2006. A masterpiece arrives. The Elder Scrolls IV. Oblivion released in March 2006 to universal acclaim, selling millions of copies within its first weeks. Players lost themselves in the vast fantasy world of Cyrodiil, exploring ancient dungeons, completing quests, and riding horses across the sprawling countryside. Bethesda Softworks had created something special. The reviews were glowing. The sales were phenomenal. The game represented everything right about the medium. Expansive, immersive, and packed with hundreds of hours of content that players had already paid for up front. But the company had an idea. A small experiment in this new digital marketplace that would echo through gaming history for decades to come. The experiment begins. In April 2006, just 1 month after Oblivion's launch, Bethesda announced downloadable content available through Xbox Live Marketplace. The first pack was simple: horse armor, a purely cosmetic item that cost $2.50 and did absolutely nothing to change the horse's abilities. Your horse wouldn't take less damage or run faster. It would simply look different. It was a test. As Bethesda's VP of PR and Marketing, Pete Hines, stated, "We're not going to make any knee-jerk decisions based on it being available for 5 hours. We'll see what folks think and put out a few others we have planned and figure out where to go from there." The gaming community's reaction was swift and brutal. The backlash. A community united in outraged. Players were outraged. $2.50 for cosmetic horse armor? In a game they'd already paid $60 to own? The forums erupted with criticism. Gaming news sites published condemning editorials. YouTube videos dissecting the absurdity went viral. The cosmetic item was deemed too expensive, with consumers uncomfortable paying 3 to 4% of the full game's price for a single piece of superficial content. It felt like a cash grab. It felt insulting. Games were supposed to be complete products. You paid your money, you got your game, end of transaction. Bethesda had crossed a line that gamers didn't even know existed until it was crossed. The incident became a meme, a cautionary tale about publisher greed. Surely this experiment would fail spectacularly and serve as a warning to other companies. They were wrong. The unexpected success. Actions speak louder than words. Despite the outrage, despite the mockery and negative press, the horse armor continued to sell. It sold for more than 2 years after release, eventually becoming the 9th best-selling DLC for Oblivion on Xbox Live Marketplace. The numbers didn't lie. Players complained loudly and publicly, posting angry rants and recording furious videos. But they also paid quietly and privately, clicking that purchase button when nobody was watching. This disconnect was noted by every major publisher in the industry. Other companies were watching closely and taking careful notes. The message received wasn't, "This was a mistake." It was, "This works, but we need to do it more carefully." The seeds were already planted. A global perspective. While Bethesda's horse armor became the infamous symbol of microtransactions in Western gaming, the concept had been thriving elsewhere for years. In South Korea, the microtransaction revenue model gained popularity with Nexon's online free-to-play games, starting with Quiz Quiz in 1999, followed by MapleStory in 2003. The first known instance of a loot box system is believed to be an item called Gachapon Ticket, introduced in the Japanese version of MapleStory in June 2004, costing 100 Japanese yen per ticket. The Asian market had already demonstrated that this model could be incredibly lucrative. Games could be offered for free while generating revenue from players who spent on virtual items. But in Western console gaming, Oblivion's horse armor was the watershed moment. When AAA Gaming discovered that players could be charged full price for the game and then charged again for additional content. The floodgates open, an industry transformed. In the years following Bethesda's experiment, the gaming landscape transformed rapidly. What started as a controversial experiment became standard practice. Bethesda themselves learned from the controversy. Their subsequent Oblivion DLC offered more substantial content at higher prices and was better received. In 2009, Electronic Arts introduced microtransactions into FIFA Ultimate Team. By 2011, this single feature had generated over $100 million for EA. By 2015, it reached $800 million per year. The model evolved rapidly. Cosmetic items gave way to loot boxes, randomized rewards borrowing from gambling psychology. In 2010, Valve transitioned Team Fortress 2 from paid to free-to-play with microtransactions, reporting a player count increase of over 12 times their original base. Meanwhile, mobile gaming exploded with microtransactions baked into its DNA. In 2015, Clash of Clans reportedly earned $1.5 million per day from their freemium model. The mobile market proved that the whale model worked, a small percentage of players accounting for the vast majority of revenue. The empire expands, no game left behind. Throughout the 2010s, console and PC games incorporated lessons from both mobile gaming and their own experiments. Battle passes became ubiquitous, seasonal progression systems requiring ongoing purchases. Season passes offered future content at discounted rates. Virtual currency systems added layers of abstraction between real money and purchases, making spending feel less tangible. Premium currencies were deliberately priced so players would always have leftover points, psychologically encouraging additional spending. The terminology multiplied: microtransactions, DLC, season passes, battle passes, loot boxes, cosmetics, skins, emotes, premium currency. By 2023, EA reported that microtransactions had reached nearly $4.3 billion in annual revenue, with FIFA Ultimate Team accounting for almost half, on top of billions from selling the games themselves. Fortnite generated over $5 billion in 2018 alone, despite being free to play. The industry had been completely transformed. The dark side, when profit eclipses ethics. The true cost wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in growing controversies and psychological harm. Some games made purchasing loot boxes too easy, requiring a simple button press with no confirmation. Young children would keep pressing buttons, not realizing they were emptying their parents' bank accounts. Stories emerged of parents discovering thousands of dollars in charges. The comparison to gambling became unavoidable. Loot boxes used the same psychological techniques as slot machines: variable rewards, flashy audio-visual feedback, and premium currency reducing the psychological pain of spending. Governments began investigating. Belgium declared loot boxes illegal gambling. The Netherlands followed. China required games to disclose loot box odds, revealing some rare items had odds of 0.01% or lower. The UK Parliament and US Federal Trade Commission launched investigations. Academic researchers found concerning correlations between loot boxes and problem gambling behaviors. In 2017, EA's Star Wars Battlefront 2 became a flashpoint for accumulated frustration. The game launched with progression heavily tied to purchasable loot boxes, creating pay-to-win scenarios. When players complained about excessive grinding to unlock characters, EA responded that it was meant to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment. That response became the most downvoted post in Reddit history, with over 683,000 downvotes. The backlash was so severe that EA temporarily removed microtransactions, and Disney reportedly intervened. The incident sparked broader conversations about whether the industry had gone too far. The legacy: living in the world horse armor. Built today, microtransactions are simply a fact of gaming life. They're so normalized that younger gamers often don't understand why older gamers are bothered by them. The global mobile gaming market alone generated $92.2 billion in 2022, an 83% increase from 2017's $50.4 billion. That 250 horse armor, mocked and dismissed as a failure, turned out to be the opening shot in a revolution. It became the model for many games that followed and is considered the first primary example, often synonymous with microtransactions in video games. The gaming industry has been fundamentally restructured around this revenue model. Game design itself has changed, with developers creating systems specifically designed to encourage spending. The debate continues about whether this has led to predatory practices or beneficial outcomes like free-to-play games reaching wider audiences and ongoing support for games. What we've learned: the story of the first mainstream microtransaction isn't just about one company's experiment or one community's outrage. It's about how quickly the unacceptable becomes acceptable, how the outrageous becomes normal, and how economic incentives can reshape entire industries. It's about the disconnect between what we say we want and what our behavior reveals. The gaming community said they would never accept horse armor, but enough bought it anyway to prove the model viable. They said they'd never accept loot boxes, but billions of dollars later, loot boxes became standard. They said they'd never accept pay-to-win mechanics in full-priced games, but those games continue to be released and purchased. Gamers in 2006 couldn't have imagined that less than 2 decades later, they'd be living in a world where free-to-play games generate billions, where purchasing in-game items is routine, where children can accidentally spend thousands of dollars, where games are designed around monetization rather than monetization being designed around games, and where the real question isn't whether games will have microtransactions, but how many and how aggressive. The horse armor wasn't just a cosmetic item. It was a glimpse into the future of gaming, a future that arrived faster and went further than anyone expected. It was proof that if a revenue stream exists, it will be exploited to its maximum potential. And it all started with a simple question: would anyone really pay $250 for armor that does nothing? The answer, as it turned out, was yes. Enough people said yes to change everything. The industry learned its lesson from that experiment, but it wasn't the lesson that outraged gamers thought they were teaching. The lesson wasn't "don't do this." The lesson was "do this, but smarter." And they have been ever since.